Hey there, we are live with Jenna Kast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. Can you tell us a bit about your art business? I see your beautiful abstract paintings in the background there, and I'm so interested in how you're selling your abstract paintings, where the inspiration comes from, and all the things. So, if you could just give us a little bit of background on how you got to where you are.
Sure. So yes, I'm in my studio right now. I'm kind of in the midst of creating my next collection, so I have pieces everywhere. But goodness, okay. My short version of my story is I am a marketer and graphic designer by trade, and I have always made art, been artistic, been creative my whole life. But I started painting more in my adulthood, just sort of as a hobby and something to sort of balance out my work life. And I started really focusing on my art practice in early 2019. And that's kind of when I started sharing it on social media as well. And everything just kind of grew really organically from the start. Like, people seemed to be attracted to my work, so I started sharing more and more, and people started collecting, and it just kind of grew out of that. When the pandemic happened, there was like a big bump of online art attention and sales, and that's when like my work kind of started to grow and become popular. So there's kind of a nice boost from that. But over the past years that I've been focusing on my art practice, I've just been focusing on really doing heartfelt work. I never started making art out of a place of wanting to sell it or needing to sell it. So my focus has always been on making art that I need to make and that is enjoyable for me and makes me happy. So everything you see in my work today has kind of grown out of that.
I love that. And that's such an opposite way that I think of it, which is, I love talking to people about this who have opposite views on that because there's so many positives to that. Like, I'm sure you have so much more enjoyment making things every day because there's some days I go to work and I'm doing it for the bigger paycheck, but or a big paycheck, but I'm like, I don't really want to paint rocks and grass today, but I'm just gonna do it. Like,
Yeah,
okay, so
it's I my with my previous like life slash career kind of focusing around being creative commercially or creative for a living with like marketing and graphic design. I wanted, like, for me, art was an outlet where I could create exactly the way I wanted to and do exactly what I wanted to with, nobody telling me like these are the parameters or this is the goal. So I think that's why probably my work is so crazy and colorful.
yeah. Okay. So how do you land on what colors to do? I've tried abstract painting before, and I think everybody will agree with me who has tried it. It's harder than it looks. It's like it's harder to make something look good that you have in your head when it kind of turns into a mess really quickly. I've
Yeah.
found. So is there a strategy or color theory that you follow?
hmm Yeah, that's really the hard part, is getting whatever is in your head onto the canvas. I think that my years working in graphic design have really heavily influenced me and maybe made it easier for me to go into abstract art, because a lot of graphic design is about composition and color selection. So for me, a comment that I always get about my work is my color palettes, how they're unusual, or people wouldn't normally combine colors in those ways. So for me, I feel like it comes natural, but only because I've had so many years designing and putting color palettes together. So when I'm composing my pieces, I am doing it intuitively. So I never really have a plan or a sketch or anything in mind. But I think I'm just sort of guided as I go by my eye for composition and contrast and color. So it kind of all like comes out of that just feeling what feels right in the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So, abstract art has always been appealing to me because, and I always think of the business side because, you know, so I paint, a picture of a lion or something, and it's like some people don't want a picture of a lion specifically that are having whatever symbolism a lion comes with, and
Yeah.
I would. Abstract, it's kind of whatever you want to make it, and the colors could play into feeling and all the things, but it's a lot less symbolic than painting an animal. And so I was like, oh, maybe I should dabble in abstract art, and then I could pitch it to hotels or something. Like that's always been in the back of my mind. So who is your
Yeah.
main customer?
I would say my typical customer is definitely a millennial. Um, I think, millennials collect a lot of abstract art. Um, but it's funny because when I started selling my work, I thought I would have sort of a really small niche audience for it because it's so colorful and, there are no forms or subjects. Um, but it's interesting because a lot of different types of people collect my work, people that have more of a traditional style, people that have more of a modern style. And I think it's kind of just a testament to how people interpret abstract art. Even if they've never collected it before or never really been fans of it before, a lot of it is about like an emotional connection to it. So I would say the majority of my collectors are women, but I also have a lot of collectors who are men. So it's been really interesting throughout these like past several years to see who collects art, and it's a really kind of wide swath of people.
How are people finding you? Is it your Instagram? Because your Instagram is very impressive with 90 some thousand followers.
Yeah, it's a lot of my sales and connections have come through Instagram, even more so before my numbers got higher. Um, but yeah, primarily through Instagram and social media. Pinterest is a big one when I remember to like regularly pin things. Um,
Oh,
I I feel like I say that I kind of like stumbled into this backwards because my work did kind of gain popularity during the pandemic when there were no art shows, art sales, markets, all of that sort of thing. So it's always been easier for me to attract people through social media than it has been in person. So the past couple of years for me, I've really been focusing on um, developing more in-person connections and doing in-person shows and getting gallery representation and that sort of thing.
very cool. Okay. So I noticed that you have a gallery connected to your Instagram. You have a
Mhm.
tag them. How has that been? How did you get connected with them? Do you get a certain percentage of sales through them? I have never done the gallery thing, so I'm curious.
I'm new to the gallery route. I think because I never went to art school or did it the traditional route, I'm coming into it later. Um, but I've also learned sort of what to look for and what to avoid when working with galleries. But the gallery I'm a part of now, they have 4 locations that are semi local to me. It's about an hour away in an area that's a really popular vacation destination spot. So that was appealing to me because there are a lot of visitors from Chicago, New York, like bigger cities. So location wise, that was really appealing. But it really happened because I went up there just for a day, like family trip, stopped into a gallery, talked to them about what they looked for in artists, if they're currently looking for artists, and sent an email to the owner, like introducing myself, all of that, providing my portfolio. And then he reached out to me and ended up bringing me on as a represented artist. So it really just grew from me physically going in and saying, I'm an artist. Like, what do you look for in the artists you represent? Um, and I think that sort of relationship building is really important. And that was last year, September, when I started that relationship with them. So it's really still very new. So I've sold some work there, but because it's a vacation heavy place, this is sort of their slower time of the year. So I'm really interested to see over the next year or two how that relationship works out. But I also know other local artists who I'm friends with who are also represented at that gallery. So it's kind of nice to be able to get their opinions and experiences and everything. But how it works out monetarily is when you work with any gallery or you're represented by a gallery, there will be a percentage that you pay them from your work. Typically, it's 40 or 50%, which is a lot and seems like a lot. Um, but it's sort of typical for any time you have your work represented by someone. And my advice on the subject is always if you're going to be paying someone 40 or 50% to sell your work, like they should be working to earn that 40 or 50%. So the gallery that I work with, they post all the time about it. They're really good at marketing. They have an online gallery in addition to the physical galleries. They're really, really knowledgeable. They have a big collector base that they connect with. So that's a big thing for me. I need to feel like if they're selling my work, that they're earning that percentage that I'm giving them.
I gotcha. Yeah, but I mean, it does sound like a lot of money to give up 50%, but you get to focus on painting instead of marketing, which I
Yeah.
teach artists the business of art, and all the time artists are like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do the thing. So this would be a
Yeah.
really great route if somebody really, really doesn't like any of the marketing. And so, but to find did you search around to find a gallery that was probably a best fit for your style, or where was anything put into play like that?
Yeah, I one of my goals for this year is to gain representation with additional galleries. So I have a whole list of galleries that I kind of watch and determine if they're a good fit. With this gallery in particular, I was familiar with it because it's semi-local to me, and it's a really like well-known, well-respected gallery. And one of my concerns with being represented by them is that they don't typically sell a lot of, or they don't typically feature a lot of really colorful abstract work. But I also know that my work is really not typical for where I live and my market and everything. But because the people who own the gallery and run the gallery have so much experience, I had faith in them that if they say that it's going to be a fit, then it is going to be a fit. And so far, it has worked out really well. So I guess it's just really trusting the people who are doing the work there, because they're going to know if your work is going to work there or not. And ultimately, if they don't sell your work, then they don't make any money either. So it doesn't benefit them to pull any wool over your eyes and say, yeah, we can sell it, yeah, we can do this, because they're just wasting their time too.
So true. Yeah, it is. It's definitely a partnership, and they don't want to keep all of that inventory just hanging out. And really, your
Yeah.
design being different probably helps it to stand out in some way. Okay, what does a day in the life of your work day look like? What time do you wake up? How many hours do you paint? Do you take breaks? And I ask this because it's really easy for me to go on site and paint a mural, and I'm there, so I might as well paint. And I plug a podcast in, and it's great. But when I am at my home studio, it's a lot harder to get that
Mhm.
discipline for myself. So, do you have any tricks for that as well?
Yeah. So there's no such thing as a typical day ever, because I paint and my art practice is the main thing that I do. But I also I do a little freelance graphic design. I do a little of this, a little of that. So I might be working on my website. I might be doing design work for a client. I might be in studio goblin mode, just like painting for hours. So I don't know if there's like really a typical day, but um, during the school year, I wake up at 7 because that's the time I have to wake up to get my daughter going for school. During the summer, I might sleep in until 8. I'm not a morning person at all. And one of the things I always like say to people is I didn't become an artist so I could wake up early and like go in and like be productive anywhere. So I love and like really, really value and cherish like my slow mornings, being able to get up and not feel rushed and not feel stressed about having to like get anything done or be anywhere. So I get up, get my daughter going in the morning, have coffee, like check in on my social media. And I usually try to come into my studio at about like 9 or 9:30. And from then, it's just a day of productivity. So it could be I'm doing a lot of painting. It could be photographing paintings. It could be uploading things to my website or updating my website. But it's just, you know, I really just get into productivity mode. So I'm like working, working, working. Um, Sometimes stopping to have lunch with my husband, who I share a studio with. And then typically I will work until maybe 5 o'clock or so and go home. And I I wouldn't like call myself a workaholic necessarily, but I'm not just productive when I'm at the studio. So like in the morning when I'm scrolling through social media, I'm like making posts and like writing things, and then later on when I go home, I'll be, editing a reel or like posting something. So I'm kind of just always on or like tuned into working whether I'm here or not. So um yeah, I don't there's like never a typical day of like I'm painting between this time and this time. It's just always like a running list of all the things that I have to do, and whatever's priority is what I focus on.
I gotcha. Okay, wait, so you share a studio space with your husband. How is that?
It's great, to be honest. And so I know it wouldn't work for everybody. Sorry, I'm just getting over COVID, so my voice is still not back to 100%. Um, so my husband and I are high school sweethearts, so we've been together for like over 20 years. So my studio was previously in my house, and then I had a little stint for a while earlier this year at an art gallery, and then I moved into his studio. So he's a commercial cinematographer, photographer, and so
Cool.
this space that I'm in is he and his business partner own this studio and this video production company. And so I kind of occupy their like studio shooting space. So most of their shoots are off site, like at the client location. Occasionally it'll be in studio, so I'll like pack my things up and move them out of the way for the day. But it's really nice because I have these big windows and this, space that's kind of all mine. And then I also do a lot of creative work for his business too. So I might like draw storyboards or do set design, or design marketing materials for him. So it's kind of nice being in this creative space together. He photographs my work and films some things for me. So we kind of have this like creative trade out, where I help him with things and he helps me with things. So it's kind of nice being in the same space because we get along really well and we create really well together. So it's been really great so far being in the same space all the time.
I love that because just yesterday my husband was on a call and I was trying to do a tutorial and we were in the same space and I was like, "Can you not talk that loud?" Thanks.
Yeah,
And he's like, "Don't you have a full studio you can go in?" And I was like, "But the living room is way more comfortable." And like,
yeah. It's nice having this big space because his office is like way in the back, so we're not on top of each other all the time, which is nice. But then, we can be like, oh, do you want to go, down the block and grab lunch or whatever? So it's really
aw,
nice.
love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question is when I ask everybody, and it's just because a lot of people listen to this podcast to learn how to get started with their business and grow, and but a lot of them really are just it's really hard in the starting point. It's really hard to get those first couple customers and get that momentum going. It just
Yeah.
feels so impossible. And so, what is your advice for artists who are in those first little bits of their art business? Like how do I get started? Say somebody wants to do fun paintings like you do and possibly maybe get into galleries. Maybe they're not too big into murals, but they see themselves in you. What would be your advice for a young version of you?
So my biggest piece of advice that I always give to artists who like message me or DM me about wanting to become a full-time artist or like really develop a business around their art is to focus on business and marketing. So if you're already an artist, you have the artist part covered, right? So the part that you need is the business and the marketing knowledge. So even if you take a course that doesn't necessarily apply to being an artist, if it covers, starting a business, being a small business, marketing, it's so valuable because, people see my business that I've built in these, 5 years, 4 years that I've been really focusing on my practice, and they see the end result. But I started from day one being a marketing professional, which a lot of people don't have that advantage. They haven't had a marketing career before they've had their art career. So a lot of what you see as an end result in my business right now is because of all of those years of experience. So having that business knowledge, that marketing knowledge is really what is going to set you apart and allow you to grow your business and connect with people and find those opportunities that you maybe normally wouldn't have thought of.
By the way, I teach that to anybody listening. I literally teach you
I know.
how to get that marketing knowledge that you maybe don't know how. So, by the way, okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so
no,
so important.
I totally agree too. And it's just, I also like podcasts like this are free. And a lot of the times
Yeah.
lately, I'll plug into podcasts, like you said, that don't necessarily have to do with art at all. I'll just
Mhm.
listen to business podcasts of guys who are buying and selling companies and running a much bigger business than I ever will have. But it
Yeah.
also like it puts me in the mindset of, oh, what I'm trying to do is not huge. Like there's way bigger things out there, so it makes it feel a little bit less daunting. And I always get some small thing from like a 1 hour episode listening to while I paint. It's so valuable to listen to
Mhm.
non-art podcasts as well.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There are a lot of resources out there for starting an art business and selling art and becoming a full-time artist, which is great. But there's also a ton of resources, a ton of free knowledge about just marketing in general. And my degree is in advertising and public relations, so I have a more traditional education on it, I guess you could say. And I think that is very beneficial, kind of having that outside perspective, like not entirely focusing on social media marketing and digital marketing, but really understanding the basic principles of traditional marketing. I think it helps give you a different perspective than everyone else that's on social media trying to market their business. So, going to Barnes and Noble and buying books on marketing is really, really helpful, kind of getting that base knowledge.
So true. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate this and getting to know the back end of your business. And I am excited to keep following along with all of your colorful creations. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really fun to chat despite my COVID voice situation happening. It's been really
great.
It's always fun to like chat about art and art business.
Yeah, to other people who like get it, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'm gonna end this, and then it's just gonna take just